Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mike. You guys are rocking with me on Mike's Intellectual Corner. On today's history reaction, we're going to be diving into another Kings and Generals. This is going to be another Mongols series. This is the expedition of Subutai and Jebe, Battle of Kalka, 1223. With that being said, as always, we're just going to dive right into it. Let's go.
This video was sponsored by The Great Courses Plus. Go to thegreatcoursesplus.com today to start your free trial. While the main Mongol army under Genghis ravaged the eastern part of the Khwarezmian...
Real quick, yes, I realize that we both use the same music, but I mean, that's one of I love that song, and it's a royalty-free song, so, you know, what are you gonna do? It happened. But yeah.
While the main Mongol army under Genghis ravaged the eastern part of the Khwarezmian Empire, his loyal generals Subutai and Jebe were pursuing Shah Muhammad II. This expedition eventually strayed from its goals and achieved much more than expected, opening up even more lands to Mongol carnage. Subutai and Jebe's expedition would later be considered one of the most daring military campaigns in history. After Mongol generals Subutai and Jebe and their 20,000 warriors failed to catch up to the Khwarezmian Shah, they spent the winter of 1220 in Iran and Azerbaijan, raiding and looting while preventing the Western Khwarezmian forces from assisting Jalal ad-Din to the east. Here they conceived the idea of conducting the most audacious reconnaissance in force in history. In 1221, the army first entered the Kingdom of Georgia, where they pillaged the countryside for supplies. The king, George IV, seeing his lands ravaged by the invaders, assembled an army which included many knights who had pledged to join the Fifth Crusade. In the ensuing battle at Sagami, Subutai feigned a retreat, which lured the slower, heavily armoured cavalry away from their infantry, before he encircled and massacred them.
See, that's one of the many, famous Mongol, tactics right there. To faintly retreat and attack with their bow still. It's crazy that even back here, we didn't have, obviously, super huge, not huge reconnaissance, but, they didn't have reconnaissance enough to where, they could tell that, I guess, from the previous battles, in the southern part of the Caspian Sea and stuff, maybe. And
massacred them. The Mongols then returned to Azerbaijan and Iran and burned and pillaged a few more cities. In a few months, Georgia was invaded by Subutai yet again. George IV attempted to stop the invaders near Tbilisi, but his army was ambushed yet again. These battles weakened Georgia and allowed the Mongols to pass through the Caucasus Mountains. Subutai pushed his forces through the mountains during the winter. His troops took heavy casualties and were exhausted.
They must have, I wonder if the heavy casualties must have been from the weather, sickness, and I don't know, what do you guys think? Because obviously they weren't met with anybody else, you know what I'm saying? They weren't met by another force, so.
His troops took heavy casualties and were exhausted. When they descended from the mountains, their army was met by a coalition of the local Lezgins, Alans, Kipchaks, and Volga Bulgarians. The enemy army had more than 50,000 troops. At first, the Mongols charged, but were repelled. The coalition decided to hold their ground and wait for the Mongols to die of starvation. Low on supplies and unable to outmaneuver his opponent, Subutai secretly sent bribes to the Kipchaks, who made up most of the force, appealing to them as fellow nomads. In the middle of the following night, the Kipchaks left and headed home. Subutai immediately charged the remaining troops and defeated them. However, he didn't stop there, and ordered his horsemen to chase after the Kipchaks, who were slowed by the baggage train of treasure.
Damn, they did them dirty, huh? It's almost it's almost kind of makes you question, like, is it worth doing business with them or even with Subutai at least? Because it seems to me like, you know what I'm saying, they're kind of used to doing stuff like that. At least if you go to war with them at any point.
By the baggage train of treasures they had received. The Mongols slaughtered them as well, and then razed the wealthy city of Astrakhan on the Volga River. Finding themselves on familiar flat terrain with plenty of villages to pillage, Jebe and Subutai now parted their forces. Jebe travelled towards the Dnieper River, while Subutai moved south to the Crimea. Subutai and the local Venetian trading post entered an alliance, and the Mongol general promised to destroy any non-Venetian colonies in the area. Indeed, he attacked and razed Soldaya, and in return, the Venetians provided the Mongols with information about...
I guess in certain terms, it can be very beneficial to said king. Like I said, as long as he doesn't enter with them in a war first, and then try to, you know, be their friend. You gotta come at them friendly from the get-go, essentially.
And the Venetians provided the Mongols with information about the kingdoms of Europe. Meanwhile, the surviving Kipchaks fled and informed the Rus princes of their plight. The area of modern Russia and Ukraine was controlled by a number of Rus principalities. They united into one alliance to defend against the Mongols. With the addition of the Kipchak forces, this alliance had a combined force of around 60,000 troops, mainly cavalry.
Well, see, even if it's cavalry, though, like, that's cool, like, that's good and all, but again, there's certain things that the Mongols have that outdo certain cavalry and all that stuff, where they can still beat everybody. The big thing of it, like I've been saying in previous videos, is that longbow is because they've taken the time to make it like their own, like the composite bow, my fault. The composite bow, they've taken so long to make it their own that they're able to freaking, you know what I'm saying, use it with like deadly accuracy. They've been able to make it like all that stuff, so.
The Mongols united into one army also, and then sent ambassadors to the Rus princes, telling them to stay out of the conflict as it didn't involve them, and the Mongol quarrel was with the Kipchaks alone. But the princes broke the golden rule. They killed the envoys. The allied army caught up to the Mongols on the banks of the Dnieper River and tried to encircle them. Subutai sacrificed a rearguard of 1,000 men who held the enemy, while the rest of the army crossed the river and retreated east. The Russians now discussed how to follow up this minor victory. Some urged to pursue the Mongols, while others argued to hold the frontier, but it was the vengeful Kipchaks who tipped the scales, and the princes decided to chase the Mongols. Each prince marched separately from the others, miles apart. For 9 days, the Mongols retreated just ahead of their pursuers. They used hit-and-run tactics while leaving behind loot, prisoners, and livestock, giving the Russians a sense that they were...
I almost wonder if the princes could have had advisors to let them know, like, hey, or at least general advisors to let them know, like, hey, we should probably travel as one. That way we're not, you know what I'm saying, getting picked off one by one just in case, you know what I'm saying? And if they did, I wonder why they didn't tell them that, maybe.
And livestock, giving the Russians a sense that they were winning. However, this was a trap. By the end of the 9th day, the Kipchak vanguard was way ahead of the rest of the army and smashed against the Mongols. Subutai ordered a retreat, crossing the small Kalka River, with the Kipchaks hot on their tail and the Russian princes lagging behind even more. With all the pieces in place, Subutai sent his heavy lancers charging against the unprepared Kipchaks from the front, while his horse archers attacked the Rus with arrows to further slow their advance. Under cover of arrows, the heavy lancers kept ploughing with ever-growing momentum against the unorganized Rus, who were charging at them one prince at a time. Every Rus who was not slain during the initial impact was funneled by the arrow fire into a narrow corridor, which forced them to smash against the forces behind them, creating a domino effect. The battlefield became the most chaotic at the river itself. The only army with a resemblance of a formation was...
Yeah, I was about to say, that looks really unorganized. And again, I feel like a lot of their cavalry are like made up of lancers and stuff like that. Like a lot of things that have to get in close, a lot of troops that have to get in close to get their damage done, essentially, whereas using their composite bows and stuff like that. But yeah.
The only army with a resemblance of a formation was that of Mstislav of Kiev, who had previously advised caution. He rallied his 10,000 and many of those who were retreating to meet the charging Mongols. Baggage trains were arranged into a fortified circle on high ground to become a beacon for the fleeing soldiers. The Mongols soon surrounded this position. Here Mstislav held out for 3 terrible days while being showered with whistling arrows and bombarded with smoke bombs.
And that has to be almost worse than getting bombarded with like bombardment, with campfire and stuff like that, because that's like 2 days worth of tiny little arrows that are like super skinny, being able to just pierce through if it gets through the right little hole, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, that just sounds like a lot of so you're not sleeping through any of that. So.
Bombarded with smoke bombs. The defenders were left with no water and had to accept the Mongol offer of a peaceful surrender. But as soon as they left the protection of their camp, they were attacked. The Allies were surrounded on all sides except for a small gap, intentionally left open, giving hope to many who took this chance to escape. Subutai laid this trap, as he preferred to have those men be killed in smaller groups by the faster horse archers, who picked them off one by one.
Yeah, that chance was done by the time that they killed that ambassador, you know what I'm saying? That was already done. So essentially it was done before the battle even started.
By one. Only 1 in 10 warriors in the Allied army managed to avoid death or capture. As for Mstislav of Kiev and the Rus nobles, they were tied up and placed beneath a wooden platform on which the Mongol generals feasted, while the Russians were crushed beneath them.
Now that's cruel as hell, but again, we can start seeing why the early Rus, the early Kievan Rus or the pre-Russian people, all that stuff. We can see why they were where they got conquered the way they did by the Mongols. You know what I'm saying? That was a pretty quick and pretty bad, battle right there. You know what I'm saying?
Beneath them. Subutai then passed through the other side of the Caspian Sea, defeating even more Kipchaks and Volga Bulgars on the way back to Mongolia. While the Mongols didn't conquer new lands on this grand expedition, they gained knowledge about the landscape, the people, and their armies. Upon returning from the Great Raid, Subutai wasted no time resting, as he was assigned a new mission, punishing the vassal kingdom of Xixia for not contributing to the Mongol campaigns. Genghis Khan never tolerated betrayal, and so he mustered a colossal force. Only this time the Mongols knew the territory and the art of the siege. The kingdom quickly fell, and the emperor was murdered.
Yeah, I don't understand why these different kingdoms keep betraying them, because it literally always ends up the same exact way. It's never good, and never, oh, we got away from them, it always ends the same way. And now they have siege towers and cattle, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, why even try it, you know what I'm saying?
And the emperor was murdered. However, before the invasion began, Genghis fell from his horse and injured his shoulder. He quickly developed a high fever and was advised to go back to Mongolia and rest, but the Great Khan pushed forward. Life is full of irony, and the Xia would be the very first and the very last people conquered by Genghis. On August 18, 1227, at the age of 66, Genghis Khan passed away. Genghis's empire endured after his death through a series of laws he developed and the capable children he had raised. He had tried multiple times to deal with the looming question of succession. Before the campaign in Khwarezm, he gathered his 4 sons in a tent and prepared to break another Mongol tradition, according to which when a father died, his domain was inherited by the youngest son, while the herd was divided between the rest. Genghis Khan, however, urged his sons to maintain the unity of the empire they helped him build, and asked Jochi to take the floor and speak his mind. Before he could say a word, Chagatai, who rumors claimed was the real firstborn to Genghis, insulted him, saying that he was not one of them and that he would never follow him as Great Khan. Genghis decided the best way to keep the empire intact was to give each son lands where they could settle and rule as long as they respected the Great Khan. The third son, Ogadai, would be the one to ascend to the throne. Jochi was promised Persia and Europe. Chagatai was given Central Asia. Ogadai would get China, while the youngest, Tului, would take care of Mongolia. And so this family dispute over the empire of one man led to lines being drawn.
See, just like, it's sad, because just like, Alexander the Great, as soon as he passed away, his entire huge empire that he just worked, obviously to the bone for, gets divided and then conquered, just like this. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. History always repeats itself, even in the weirdest ways. But yeah.
Lines being drawn all over the known world, creating a division which put the Mongol legacy in danger.
Alright guys, we'll go ahead and end it right there. So yeah, another one right there, another one in the book. So, as we can see, it's kind of crazy too, because I could have swore, Genghis Khan was obviously involved in more conquering, but he still, expanded his territory immensely to the size of, I think, like I said before, I want to say at least North America or something like that. But anyway, like I said before, thank you again, guys, for joining me on another episode of Mike's Intellectual Corner. Please join me in my next episode where I'll be doing another Kurtz video. I'll see you when I see you. I'm out. Peace!